Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Courtney Gardner. I'm a partner marketing coordinator here at Proficient, and I'm excited to welcome you all to today's Financial Close Challenges panel. If you have questions throughout the event, please type them into the chat, and we will reach out to you following today's panel. So to start things off, I'll quickly go through the agenda. First, we'll have an introduction of today's speakers. Then I'll hand it over to have them take us through the close challenges discussion. This will include period close, account reconciliations, and close management. So now I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers. Matt Hopkins is a CPA who's been with Proficient for over 11 years, and he's currently a senior project manager within our CPM group here at Proficient. Saju Phillips is a director in our CPM practice with over 9 years at Proficient and 20 years experience working with various CPM tools. Rachel Crowder has 12 years of planning and reporting experience combined with 4 years as a consultant and solutions architect. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Matt Hopkins.
Thank you, Courtney. And what I'd like to do is welcome everyone and thanks for joining. So today we're going to talk about the close challenges that we have, and not just the challenges that exist during the close activities, but also some solutions to those and some of the things that we've seen as we have dealt with multiple clients in various industries, how they are tackling the challenges that they experience in the close. And it doesn't matter if it's a small organization or a large organization. Well, we come to find that the financial close is always a hot topic. What can we do to improve our close processes? And so that's what we'll be talking about today. And as Courtney indicated, we'll be talking about three main components of it. Really, the actual close and consolidations. We'll cover account reconciliations, while not always done at the time of the period close, a very important part of it that validates the results. And then also some of the tools that we use to manage the actual close process. And so, as Courtney indicated, I'm a certified public accountant. I started my career doing audit and accounting work. I've worked with ERP systems, as well as having worked in corporate performance management for the last 11 years. So as we jump into talking about probably the most important component of the close, and that is the actual close consolidations and the speed at which we're able to get data and make sure that that data is accurate. I'd like to ask Saju Phillips. Saju, can you kind of walk us through some of the challenges that you've seen at your clients regarding the close?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Saju Phillips, and as Courtney mentioned, I've been working with various CPM tools for over 20 years. And regardless of the tool that you've been using, could be Hyperion in the past, to use Hyperion Financial Management, where you're running consolidations, or you're using Excel to consolidate all of your data. It really starts with the different GLs and the different sources that you need to bring the data from, and establishing a main chart of accounts. Now, we are all OneStream experts here on the call, so I'm going to gear some of the solutions and answers toward the OneStream software, where you can come in and establish all your dimensions. And that's what we typically do during a global design of a project. We address where the source data is coming from, and how do we get to a COA, or a chart of account, to load the data. Every organization has different data sets, different data sources, and a few examples of what I've been through through OneStream implementations have been at a global company where each region is on their own separate GL, and some are even do not have a GL, and they have Excel-based processing. The end goal is to consolidate all that data into a reporting package. And how do we get there? And the way we get there is we work with the client to establish a main chart of accounts in OneStream. Now, typically it is one single chart of account. However, if we had situations where we need multiple chart of accounts, OneStream can support that. So to address the timing of the close, right, the very first thing that we need to do is address the data and how do we get that data from the source system, map it correctly to the dimensional structure. So that's typically the first part of design. And we have conversations with the client on when we're building the dimensions. How are you handling the currency translations today? What do we need to set up in OneStream to handle that? Is all of the data you need for your reporting packages coming from the GL, or do we need to get data from different source systems? So I'm on a project today where we have an Excel close based process. The data is coming from NetSuite, and we're bringing in data and extracting from that source system to replace that Excel close reporting package. So what we've had to do with the client is first address the need of how that chart of account looks like, because they're still going through a end process of upgrading NetSuite. So they're just finished their NetSuite project. So my recommendation to our clients is, especially when we go through sales cycles and proposals, is do we have any parallel projects that we're working with? You know, are you changing GLs? How is that going to impact your main reporting package? Once we've established that, then we were starting to load the data. And then as we quickly saw the data coming in, you know, regardless of what the source system had, the client had additional requirements. You know, we needed some supplemental data to be to load it. So that required a different source system where we needed to get data from. So that example, other examples that I can go into more detail, it's really about defining the dimensional structure, defining the data sources. And we have two options from there, where within OneStream, we can manually load the data through their workflow process. And we're going to talk a lot about workflow and close and how that impacts close speed as well, and how we can also automate that data process. So one of the questions that we had before this panel meeting was, um, you know, how do we address, you know, antiquated servers? You know, with OneStream solution, when and if you're talking to the sales folks and configuring your contract, OneStream has a hosted solution on their cloud, Azure based. So that eliminates the need for having your own physical servers. So that could be addressed very quickly as far as how you sign on to the platform. Once there and we get the data and we make the connection, then we can bring in the data and address all of the other challenges to speeding up close. Things like, again, currency translation and intercompany eliminations. So I'm going to pause there for a second because I want to have Rachel and or Matt chime in there to add on to anything I just said.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I think Saji, you brought up a great point about disparate systems. Another thing I see a lot of is disparate industries or disparate operations. So within a single company, you have manufacturing, you have selling, right? You might have a distributions group, and those may be separate legal entities, and the dimensionality that they need to support those businesses or those pieces of the same business are different. Maybe you're a holding company that has businesses in different verticals. So the extensible dimensionality in OneStream allows you to define that lowest common denominator of, hey, this is what we need for external reporting, but still allow each of those sub parts of your business to have as much flexibility as they need to manage their close process and their planning and reporting as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Industry is a great example. Give an example of an oil and gas project that I'm working on currently right now as well. And Rachel hit the nail on the head, is they have different holding companies, they have a very complicated legal structure, and they needed more level of detail for their lease operating statements versus their financial statements. So we have multiple cubes set up. We have definitely extensibility built in. I think that's a value add that OneStream provides in one application versus other CPM tools that I've worked with. And to add another layer to it, this client that I'm working with is bringing all of their data into a data lake. Previous example, another project, they chose to do a manual import from NetSuite, which is fine. That's a client decision. This client wanted everything automated from a data lake, very large project, lots of data, and we're creating extensibility to load into different cubes. And then the client's reporting package will include a lease operating system for a lease operating statement, I should say, for their industry needs, along with the standard financial statements in another cube, balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, statement of equity, all of those things that are needed to drive the reporting package for close.
Yep, that's a great point. Saju, one of the things I've seen, coming back to what you said, I know Rachel and I have had clients as well where they're actually doing their consolidations in Excel, which is great because Excel can do anything. However, Excel is also prone to errors, and then also getting data loaded into Excel or even some of the older legacy applications is a challenge. We've had clients that have grown and now are doing international operations and thus have multi-currency issues that they need to now be able to handle. And then you also brought up ownership percentages, where some of these legacy systems just do not have the capacity to handle that. And I think one of the things with OneStream is that it enforces those best practices and gives you a solution that can scale with your organization. And I guess, can you kind of walk us through, from a best practices perspective, some of the things that you and Rachel have seen?
Mm-hmm. Rachel, I can think of a couple of examples. We want to talk about the holding companies and the ownership percentages, how it's handled, and I'll give an example of what we're doing at another client today.
Sorry, you said,
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
take that one. Yeah, so you can define the percentage ownership and the percentage consolidation, within OneStream and allow those to be addressed during consolidation. So you can manage your business and, get financials that roll up to your management hierarchy and also your tax, legal, statutory reporting requirements. We can build those complex calculations that deal with ownership, equity overrides, equity pickup, things of that nature. The custom translation we see a lot, right? We've all got our FAS 48, requirements to translate at historical rates, things that were being managed manually, externally in a spreadsheet that was maybe linked to another spreadsheet that was on a shared drive somewhere. Or it was hard coded, wasn't easy to understand. We can make drillable calculations in OneStream so that anyone can walk into the consolidation file and understand how we arrived at the totals and confirm that our approach was correct.
And to add to what just Rachel said, another energy company project I'm on currently, we have an alternate structure for the entity dimension. And OneStream has the ability to consolidate at different levels, at different ownership percentages, put the holding company, and also they wanted restatement of earnings and reports as the organization changes. So by period. In HFM, it was called org by period, if anybody's familiar with that. But within OneStream, it has the same capability within the consolidation engine. And to address another question that came across on the panel invite is, we're talking about the entity dimension. That's where the consolidation happens. OneStream does have the ability to do intercompany eliminations within the product, and it does have intercompany matching reports that are configured to the client's needs. So the answer is yes. OneStream does have the capability to do that. During requirements and design, we define the intercompany account pairings with the client and address CTA calculations, and it all happens within the consolidation process and how we configure the entity dimension.
One thought, Saji, you mentioned org by period. OneStream also has the ability to differentiate calculations by period. So you can retain historical calculations. And if you don't have to worry about reconsolidating historical periods, losing, the way things were addressed historically versus how we handle them now, because OneStream has the ability to have calculations that are different over various time periods.
Great point. That's a vary by time scenario type of setting that's included in the application, where within other systems, you have to configure complex calculations to do that and worry about alternate rollups that you have to create within cubes. So great observation for sure.
So I know one of the challenges that we hear frequently regarding the close is the speed at which it occurs. So, the question is, how many days should it take for a close to happen? And that really depends on your industry, the size of your organization, but then also all those various data sources and calculations, translations that might need to happen. I guess, Saju and Rachel, can you speak to how we gather the data, how it's calculated, how OneStream can speed up that process?
Sure. I can start from a data standpoint, and then maybe Rachel, you can close from a task manager standpoint, which we're going to talk about later in the session as well. So I think the first thing to address is those first business days for close, -1 or -2 or whenever that happens, is the scheduling of the data and how it's brought in. So how OneStream is going to address it and how we're going to tackle that is reducing the time of manual process of getting data into the system by automating it. That's step number one. But as we go into the project, we've tried to establish benchmarks. How long is close taking today? Let's say it's taking 12 calendar days or 12 business days. And what target do we want to meet? And that could vary by industry, as you accurately point out, Matt. But it could also vary by project. How many source systems do we need to get data from, and how many manual transactions do we need to overlay on the data after the initial GL data is brought in? So within OneStream, there's a workflow mechanism that's built in to help reduce that close time. So we try to establish a target. Let's say it's a 20% improvement or a 25% improvement. Whatever that benchmark we establish at the beginning, if it's 10 to 12 days, we try to reduce that, by a factor of 3 to 4 days, depending on what we see from a global design. And again, that could vary by industry. It could vary by the complexity of close. But there's another thing that we have to think about is when you're going through close, how do we define the security for users to go in to do their close processes? And with security, we can roll it out. Let's say it's a global organization, and each controller in their various region needs to touch the data, meaning they need to go in, either look at the data after it's imported, put in their topside adjustments, look at intercompany reconciliations, look at their account recs, and so on. That's going to add time to the calendar. So one approach is we have a diversified, a distributed type of security within the workflow where each controller goes in day 1 through day 3, whenever the data is ready, analyze their data, submit their changes. So then corporate can consolidate up, right? And that'll factor into the schedule. And security within OneStream, just give you a couple of examples, can be very detailed down, granular, all the way down to the account level, is what's called data slice security. Or we can keep it more at a high level where the scenario and the entity drives that. And that's an important design decision within the course of the project, because if we define the entity ownership to the right groups, they get all of their pieces of the pie in. That'll naturally help with the closed calendar. It's again, very big design decision in my mind is how we distribute the workflow to help with the calendar close.
Yeah, that's a great point. Talking about workflow, I guess, Rachel, can you kind of walk us through what you've seen at clients? The concept of workflow, I think, is new to some. Could kind of walk us through how you've seen it used and the benefits that we see there.
Yeah, and I'll marry both workflow and kind of task manager at the same time. Workflow is it's the steps you need to complete in order to finish the close process, for lack of a better word. We bring in data from external sources. That's considered an import. You may adjust statistical or supplemental data via manual data entry forms. Integrations can also be built to import those as well. You might have cash flow adjustments that you do in a form. You may have topside entries. These are the components of workflow. And we can lay one of the marketplace solutions, or over 50 marketplace solutions that OneStream has created that you can add to your application. One is called Task Manager, and it actually helps you line out the tasks for each role within your close process. They can be tasks within OneStream or outside. And we can monitor the status of close, see dependencies between tasks. We can have a dashboard for reporting on where we are in the close process. It's one place to go for each person in the close process to see what they're responsible for, where they are, and allows visibility at all levels to what the status is in close. And I see a lot of clients get a lot of benefit out of Task Manager from that regard.
Got you. Well, and let's drill down on Task Manager and spend a few minutes on that now. So I know I've had a client before in the past where you talk about we can use it to manage the close. There are other things that we can use Task Manager for as well. I know I had a client where they would create tasks for the year-end audit, working in conjunction with their external auditor. And there was that checklist that was shared between the two groups. And once again, coming back to the flexible security model of being able to enable someone from outside the organization to come in and be able to have access to Task Manager. And they created a shared task list of these are the things that we're going to do as part of the annual audit. So I know very flexible in that regard. Can you tell us, using Task Manager, are notifications, how do people know what's in Task Manager and what they should be doing and kind of what those next steps are?
Absolutely. So I'll say traditionally we see, closed checklists in Excel or on a SharePoint site, and there's a lot of maintenance involved in using a tool like that. The benefit of using OneStream for Task Manager is when you come in on your One Place tab, your landing page is the task that you're responsible for. And I can click from my task list to the activity that needs to be performed and be taken to that place. When I complete it, that notification that the task has been completed isn't just for me. I don't have to go somewhere else and notify. That notification is escalated to the next level. If there's an approval process, that approver can complete they can approve it, they can reject it, they can provide you feedback, things of that nature. So you get workflow in that regard too. That workflow word can be confusing, but it's your landing page once you get in OneStream, and then it's also completely reportable at all levels within the close process.
Fantastic.
At one point you said, Matt, at the very beginning, workflow is new to a lot of clients, and it's definitely new for people who use other CPM tools. I can name them off the list of my hand. Probably everybody knows it: Hyperion, Vena, Analytics, Host Analytics, whatever it might be. They don't have a built-in workflow like OneStream does. And that's regardless if you use Task Manager or not. So everything is workflow driven. So that's a paradigm shift for any client that's looking at a new CPM tool. So the very first thing Rachel said, right, is when users log in, that's what they're taken to is, go to your workflow and execute your processes. That immediately adds value, in my opinion, to the software, because you're already speeding up your close process because you're taken to a certain set of tasks that you have to do, irregardless of implementing Task Manager. But Task Manager is absolutely the right solution to speed up close even more. as Rachel pointed out, with the checklists and things that you can define and the notifications and so on.
Great point. And I know I had a client where it was a small organization. All of the accounting group was in one office, and they had the whiteboard with all the tasks for month end listed on the whiteboard. And they thought, we really don't need to have task manager. And so we walked them through a pilot of it. And what they came to find was it was very useful. And I think the workflow was a key component of it. And it's, you go to that landing page, you see exactly what you have to do. You don't have to stick your head out the door, look down the hall for the whiteboard to see where we are on a certain task, or you get notified, or you can just go directly into the app looking for the things that you need to do. And it's very useful even for those organizations that are, smaller. So I think there's a lot of benefit to be seen there.
And that whiteboard hasn't been much use the last couple of years where we're all working remotely and working from home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent point, right?
I do miss
and
those days, though.
I'm sorry, Saji, go ahead.
No, I do miss those days. I want to get in front of a whiteboard soon.
Yeah, agreed. No, and even, for the larger organizations, I think it's an invaluable tool because, when we have a distributed organization, you have people in different countries, different time zones, something like that allows you to communicate exactly where you are, I think is important. And I guess, not just communicating to who needs to do a specific task, but from an overall management perspective of the close, what are some of the tools within Task Manager? If I'm a controller or a CFO and I want to know where we are in the close, what are some of the tools available to see that or manage that?
I would think it would be the Task Manager dashboard. Wouldn't you agree, Rachel? That's basically which comes with the solution. But I'll let you highlight that.
Yep, there's a dashboard. I mean, there's obviously a detailed list. You can also, you can define tasks in categories. You can see percentage. You can have a dashboard that shows you percentage of completion within each of those categories. That can then be clicked upon to analyze that more detailed list, and you can see which specific tasks are outstanding. I grew up in a manufacturing environment, so I learned a lot of lean, right? You have to define your problem first, then measure. And Task Manager gives you that ability to measure what tasks are taking the longest during your close process, so you can focus your efforts there. The reality is, no solution is the end all be all. We're all in this roadmap and this journey towards an improved financial close process. Even when we get a great close process, the environment that we work in changes, right? There are new regulations, there's a new product offering, whatever it may be. And so it simplifies, that controller process manager's responsibility at month end. And it also gives them tools that they would have had to use other means to collect data on to further, improve the close process.
Right. Yeah, that the dashboards and the reporting available in Task Manager, I like to kind of refer to that as a who's my bottleneck report. That way you can see, month over month, period over period, is this a bottleneck? Is this something that we need to change our process for so that we can improve the performance of the close? So a great tool, I think, to manage that. And so we took a little deep dive into Task Manager, coming back to consolidations, eliminations, translations, and reporting. Let's talk a little bit about some of the tools available to help facilitate both external reporting, internal reporting, statutory reporting. What are some of the tools available in OneStream?
Sure. Reporting all starts with how you want to get data out of the cube and what OneStream calls a cube view. That's basically the layout. And for those of you who've used CPM tools before, think of data grids in HFM or some type of query that you're getting from a database, let's say it's Vena or whatever in Excel. It all comes down to row column POV layout. Once that's established and where it's driven from is dimensionality. So when we think about reports, we have to consolidate the data, do the eliminations, translations, do any topside adjustments to get to that consolidated view. We start with cube views, which can be then embedded into dashboards. And then we also have the Excel added in two forms, one in Microsoft Office and one within the application, what OneStream calls a spreadsheet. So we develop reports based upon the client needs to drive all of their financial statements, all the things that Matt, you were talking about, customized reports that can be retrieved directly from the cube data, and or if we have data that's sitting on what's called the relational side or stage within the application, that's the added benefit that I've seen to OneStream compared to other CPM tools, marrying data from different sources, cube data and external data, maybe a data warehouse or a SQL database. And now you can get things like customer count. They give a current project right now, more detailed transactions. If you're in retail, maybe you have product information down to the SKU level. Oil and gas, you got wells and completion dates. What level of detail do we want to put in the cube versus what level of detail do you want in that external repository? So every client has some type of board package or monthly reporting package, whatever we want to call it, that we need to drive some standard reports. And to help with that, is OneStream provides templates that we can create row and column. Most probably we'll use that for the standard statements. And then we customize from there, to ask that question. And there's one thing I want to add to that is, it was a question that was brought up on the registration, is how does metadata changes handled? How are metadata changes handled? And within OneStream, you have a dimension library where you maintain all of your hierarchies. Anytime you have changes, we can automate that. OneStream has a marketplace solution called Application Control Manager that came out in a recent release, which we're actively using on a current project. That's one way to address it. But really, there's a lot more. There'd probably be another 2-hour session, if you will, but just to highlight the question, yes, can OneStream handle metadata changes? Absolutely. We have to establish a process on using a tool, doing it manually. How do we want the member to get automatically loaded? So there's got to be some governance around it as well. Back to the reporting question, Matt, as changes are made, we try to dynamically create reports where those changes are reflected in those rows and columns. So when the user runs it, they can run it from the workflow. They can retrieve data from Excel. So you have multiple formats that you can export and retrieve.
Yeah, that's a great point, Saju. And I'll frequently refer to myself as the old CPA in the room. I think of the row column reports, the ability to generate a file I could export to Excel was always exciting, because then I could be able to manage it. Mm-hmm. And do what if with the numbers. I guess, can you kind of walk through, or Rachel, if you could walk through kind of some of the capabilities within the application, because some of the new exciting, the dashboards are something that I'm used to seeing row column set data. That's how I prefer it. But other people like to see it other ways, using dashboards and the capacity to drill down and see the detail behind some of those high level graphics.
Yeah, dashboards we use in 100% of our projects, just because you don't get one report to close your books, right? If that was the case, then we wouldn't need such a complex tool. You need consolidating balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flow. You need operational views. You need SG&A views. You need a full package of reports to support that close review process. And dashboarding allows us to present the reports that you need in a single view, right? You go one place, you click on maybe multiple tabs, lots of different ways to present within a dashboard. Maybe it's a panel that has 4 reports on it, right? So it's kind of, hey, here's my high-level panel. From there, we can click to drill into any of those and see a more detailed view of the data presented, right? Okay, here's my sales report, here's my margin, here's my SG&A. I can click in any of those to go to a more detailed view. All of that is drillable down all the way to the stage data that was loaded originally. And we can configure it to drill back to the source system to, get the general ledger of transactions, right? See the journal entries or the invoices. That's all capabilities that are within in OneStream that can be configured. Now we do love our Excel, those of us who've lived in the close process. So dashboards, live inside OneStream. Another tool I see used frequently are reporting books. And that's again, it's just a collection of reports. You may have a monthly operating review or something like of that nature. And this is a group of reports that you produce, each month. In the click of a button, you get an Excel document that has 20, 50 tabs, whatever that may look like for your business. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you that thing that you're used to, that you're comfortable with.
I'd like to touch upon what Rachel just said, because I see it at every client, is they want to revert back to the way they used to do it in Excel. So why try to recreate what we used to do in the past and try to create complex formulas? Leverage OneStream's capability to do that drill down versus trying to retrieve data in a formula, because then you lose that aspect, and you see that trade-off a lot across multiple clients. Is once they learn how to navigate within the system, then they'll realize that benefit of implementing it that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. I need to come into the new world, learn how to use dashboards, and I think using a tool like OneStream really makes it easier to transition and take advantage of some of these newer best practices tools.
Mm-hmm.
So from a consolidation and even task manager perspective, anything else, any other best practices or solutions that we can think of before we move on to account recs?
I was actually going to segue. One of the things we can drill to is the underlying account reconciliation. So, OneStream, they want to be the one place that you go for your closing and reporting needs. One of the huge benefits of having a single system that can handle your trial balance and your task manager and your reconciliation is that you don't have to go click out, open another application, go multiple places. It's not disjointed. It's all linked within one application. And the account reconciliation module is something we see implemented quite a bit with consolidations, because you can go from the exact same data that was loaded for your trial balance. That same data is used as the source for your balance sheet reconciliations. And then those reconciliations can be configured in a number of ways. So, Matt, did you have a question there?
You're on a roll, Rachel.
Oh.
No, I think with account reconciliations, one of the things that we typically see, a lot of organizations have used Excel just because, as we said before, Excel can do almost anything. What it can also do is produce a lot of errors because of wrong key punches, data that's not current. It's dated information. And then once you actually execute it, how do you go through an approval process? How do you store that reconciliation? I mean, I've seen customers that will do a manual reconciliation in Excel. They will print off the Excel spreadsheet. They will take their support, they will scan it, and then they will file that. And you want to talk about some angst among your accounting professionals, have them do tasks like that. And I think using OneStream, even compared to some of the other automated tools out there, to Rachel's point, bringing in the exact same data set that you are using for your consolidations. Other applications don't do that. It's different integrations. It can be different versions of the data. So I think, Rachel, if you can kind of walk us through some of those time-saving tools that we talked about. How does, OneStream save us from having to do an Excel reconciliation and print it off and compile all that data?
Well, I'm not going to take the fact that you criticize my blue sheets personally. My first job, we did reconciliations in Excel and we printed out the blue sheet. That was the cover page for every reconciliation. And we put it in a binder and the manager signed off on it. And the auditors looked at it when they came to do their inspections. And, not dating myself, but that's an outdated process. And it's not something that we can support today where we're all working remotely. There were also risks around that, right? Where are we getting that balance from? The source of that data, how are we confirming that's the current balance that's also in the consolidated financials? So that's a huge risk we see, around kind of using those old processes, having separate loads to other applications, right? There are other tools that can do account reconciliations, but using a single load also offers us that assurance that we have the same data being used in both places. And we're not going to ever have an issue where the reconciliation doesn't actually tie to the balance sheet.
Mhm.
Let's see, sorry.
I think that's the biggest quick win for every client. That discover process and that data integration. It's like immediate, right? If you're on Blackline or Trintech and then you're on another CPM tool for your consolidations, that's like quick win number one as far as account recs.
And then from a standardization process, when it's all done manually, the Houston office does one thing, the Charlotte office does another, God only knows what New York and San Francisco and Beijing are doing, right?
Mhm.
So now we get our account reconciliations into the system of record, and we can standardize the process. We can define thresholds for, materiality. We can say, we can define the risk around those account reconciliations. Are they low, medium, high? We can provide completion rules. This reconciliation requires supporting documentation. It cannot be submitted without supporting documentation. So how many times has somebody emailed you something without the attachment, right? Or you've gone out to the file share and it's not there where you think it should be. So we can create what are called, completion rules on the reconciliations. We can create auto reconciliation. So there are things that the balance hasn't changed in 10 periods. Do we really need to touch that every month or every quarter? Are there some rules that we can define to auto complete that reconciliation and create less touch points?
Mhm.
We can group reconciliations. We can group them not just by legal entity and account, but by function. Say you manage cash centrally. We can group those across currencies. So you could have a full cash reconciliation that your cash management team, treasury, is handling, and you don't have to worry about bothering the business with those things. Once the reconciliation is, or when you're completing the reconciliation, you can custom configure the reason codes that you use in that list. We have one client right now that we're working to integrate some of those reconciling items into their statement of cash flow, right? So now that we've identified those, how can we take that data and use it somewhere else? We can report on those in a dashboard that comes with the tool. We have an approval process. We can submit that. It can go up to 10 levels of approval. We can assign auditors the ability to log into this system and view all of the history, the audit, view the documentation without modifying anything. There are a lot of things a lot of benefits we get from using OneStream as the system of record for reconciliations.
Yeah, you you brought up a very good point. As we look at the data that comes in, so it's imported from the trial balance. We also have the capacity to bring in data from subledgers for certain subledger accounts. So accounts receivable, accounts payable, fixed assets, and that auto reconciliation of even subledger data, as well as those balances that have not changed or that are within a certain criteria. For some organizations, that's been a huge benefit. I know some still say, you know what, I want them to look at every single reconciliation regardless of what it is, and that's fine. The application can do that, or it can auto reconcile those, and it can still go through an approval process. So somebody does look at it, even if it is auto reconciled. So I think time saving wise, I think it's a huge benefit to be able to leverage account reconciliations. And I guess, Saju, from what you've seen on account reconciliations, what are some of the other benefits?
Sure. I think the one layer even deeper than that is the transaction matching that OneStream introduced, in the later versions that can be implemented. But you guys hit all the key points, right? It's discovering the data, the approval process, the attachments are key to provide supporting detail, and the thresholds that need to be defined in those rules to what's acceptable as far as an auto reconciliation, right? Some accountants are, I'm not an accountant, Matt, I know you are. You might be more detail oriented than I'm more in the gray area on the FP&A side, but I run a lot of consolidation projects. But what is that acceptable threshold to the client, right? What do we actually need to go to auto reconciliation? And all of that information is there in one view. I think that's the biggest thing.
Right.
I'm thinking to the global company that actually one of our sales folks were thinking about yesterday. I was at that design document and how we're able to. I think it was Rachel hit it on the points. Like Beijing is doing something different, GL, and how all of their systems were disconnected, but each group, each controller can go onto each country and submit their recs all within one application and still have access to their consolidation data, look at their reports. I think you guys touched on everything. I mean, even talk through the drill down approach. You can go to consolidations, look at that data, and then switch over to account recs, to look at the detail. All that's there.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
and Saju, you brought up transaction matching. Do you want to explain that a little bit to some of the folks that may not have heard about it before?
Sure. It's a relatively new facility in OneStream, but basically what you're doing is setting up, without getting too technical, setting up groupings or pairs and the rules corresponding with it to match the transactions from the subledger data that's coming in, to automate that process versus having to do some type of manual process. Without transaction matching, we have the auto reconciliation, which you can obviously implement without having to do transaction matching, but you're taking it a level deeper, is the general idea.
Right.
It does take some extra configuration. So when we go through with proposals with clients, a key thing to think about, because it's all, what everybody here on this call is here for is to hear a solution. What can it do? Now, how does it impact your close timeline? But eventually, what's the next step as a project, and how is it going to impact you? So all those things that we've talked about, right, is implementing a consolidation timeline. What are the things that we have to think about and requirements in design? And now, are we going to add on task manager? Are we going to add on account reconciliations and then do transaction matching as well? Typically different phases, right? And my preference, and I would love it to hear from you two, my preference would be consolidations phase one, then account recs and transaction and subsequent phases. But you can do account recs first. It's all about the global design on how the dimensionality is going to be impacted when the consolidation phase starts. And again, I'd love to hear your input on that as well, to think about that. Because I know you guys are on a couple of projects that are dealing with that. So I'm sure the audience will love to hear it.
Yeah, I think that chart of account structure, the starting point, your consolidating chart of account structure is key. And I think that, and then consolidations, to your point, I think is next. Now, can you do consolidations in account recs and task manager concurrently? Absolutely. There's a little bit of a lag time on some of those, but I think the consolidations, that's the foundational portion of a project. And so Rachel, love to hear your take on that as well.
Yeah, I always go back to the OneStream white paper, 6 steps to leading at speed. And, the first step is getting that book of record in place. You have to have a clean process around close and consolidation, financial consolidation, reporting, statutory reporting. They consider that looking backward, and then from there you can move to looking forward and your planning and other things. But that first step is always going to be having a system of record.
Right.
Matt hears me say it too much. I'm sorry.
Yep. So for the audience, you've heard it from the delivery team. That's what we recommend, especially for all you sales folks on the call.
Yeah, and Saju, you bring up a good point. And I think Rachel, you called out, there are over 50 marketplace solutions. So, logical next steps, consolidations to us, it's key. And for financial organizations, that is typically one of the first things that we hear about is how do we ensure our close numbers are accurate? How do we speed up close? We want to be faster and better so that our people can now analyze data instead of compiling the data. And so we always, aim for that sweet spot, which is consolidations. There are other next steps that are logical, planning, budgeting, forecasts, critical components, management reporting, internal reporting that go beyond your external financial reports. Those are key things. And I think we've all seen, everyone from Proficient on this call has seen various approaches to it. Big bang or phased by functionality. But to us, the consolidations, that chart of accounts, that is the cornerstone of any successful implementation. So today we wanted to talk about some of the challenges in the close, and I think that with Saju, you've been able to talk through some of your experiences. Rachel, you've been able to tell us some of what you've seen. It's always eliminating those manual tasks, eliminating or mitigating the chance for manual input error, loading data automatically, performing automatic eliminations, translations, the ability to scale to new organizations, acquisitions, dispositions, some of the friendly reporting tools that are available, the ability to have dashboards and to do these reporting books. I think that combined with some of the workflow and just the logical, user-friendly natures of the application, I think are huge benefits that we see with OneStream. And I guess, Saju, Rachel, what are some of the kind of key takeaways for you looking at OneStream?
Sure. My key takeaway on the consolidation and reporting side is wherever you're coming from, Excel, CPM tool, whatever you're doing from a consolidation process to get your reporting data to your financial statements, I believe OneStream can absolutely do it. And I think speed can be improved. That's working on both sides, from Proficient to the client side, to make sure that we're addressing all of the pain points of what you've experienced now and how we can make that faster, which takes both the consulting side and the client side to work in tandem. It's a key part to get there, right? Because there's going to be some information that we need to make that happen. The things in the project schedule to meet timelines, that type of thing. And OneStream can absolutely do it. Whatever solution you're looking at, we've all seen them, right? We've all used it and various tools, and I think it's one of the best products, right, that I've been working with in the last several years. And as far as next steps, right, as far as best practice, is, you mentioned it, Matt, is the financial planning piece, right? So one key thing to remember for the audience is we're in one application. Rachel brought up extensibility earlier, right? We want to plan for and global design your platform, not just your consolidation reporting. Matt mentioned management reporting. That could be part of the consolidation phase if we want to include it in the scope, but we have to absolutely think about your go forward steps within OneStream, because it's not like you're going to have a consolidation application here, then we're going to go down 6 months later and have a planning application there. They're interconnected. That's what you have to understand, and that's something we definitely have to discuss. So I'll pass it on to you, Rachel, if you want to add anything.
I'll be quick. I'll say it's one stream, but it's not one way. It
Yeah.
is infinitely configurable. So you're not pigeonholed into a single way of doing things. I think that, the key part is that discovery process. It's the requirements and design and analyzing what data you have available and how OneStream can be configured best to meet your needs.
Okay. Great. Well, I think we're pretty close to the top of the hour. Saju, Rachel, thank you for sharing your experiences of some of your clients and what you've seen with OneStream. Courtney, we can turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you, Rachel and Saju, and everyone who joined us on today's call. We hope to see you online at a future event.